Hi, everybody. We are back. We being Sylvia and Peter. And as you know by now, we talk about topics that have something to do with mental health and well-being or lack of mental health and well-being. I am going to attend a suicide, what's it called? Suicide.
Prevention, awareness,
No, summit. Yeah, thank you. Suicide Summit this weekend coming. And it's the third time that it's being run, and it's being run with experts in their field from across the world. I've done it twice before, very informative, excellent presentations and knowledge. And last year, the story was pretty much the same as the year before. So I'm not sure what I will be hearing this year, if anything has moved in one direction or another. But I think it's time for you and I, Sylvia, to maybe have another go at suicide, because I know you have some views on how it's being described and what certain charities, organizations think of suicide. And it's a topic that people talk about or do not talk about. And very often they don't talk with the people who are suicidal because they're afraid of saying something wrong and push them over the edge. All sorts of things, all sorts of stigma. And in some countries, about 30, late 20s, maybe 30 countries, suicide is still illegal. But what is it that you are that you've stumbled across recently, Sylvia, about suicide and how we talk about it?
Well, recently, literally last week, so the end of June, beginning of July, we had the Baton of Hope, which is the biggest suicide prevention awareness campaign the UK has seen, with the baton travelling from Glasgow all the way through UK, Ireland, Wales, and ended up in London last week. And with Riders Minds, the charity that I'm involved with, we managed to arrange for the baton to be carried on horseback on one of the sections in London. So there's been a lot about suicide prevention, suicide awareness in these last 2 or 3 weeks. And there's a few things that spring to mind for me. I think we've spoken about this before, that regardless of all the suicide awareness and prevention and talking about it, why do the figures still stay the same? You know, in the UK, it's the biggest killer under 45 years of age. In the UK, it's one death nearly every 2 hours. Globally, one death every 40 seconds. There's nearly 800,000 people die from suicide every year. Why do the figures stay the same? I would like to think that this latest campaign will raise awareness, but I still haven't seen it in the main press. I still haven't seen it on headline TV. That's one thing that bothers me. Despite all this awareness, and I have a beef, as you know, Peter, about awareness is fabulous, information is fabulous, data is fabulous, but what do we do with that? Mm-hmm. It's actions make the difference. We do have to break down the stigma and fear around suicide. You know, a lot of people don't talk about it or don't ask someone if they sense they're not okay, because the fear of, oh, I don't want to tip them over the edge, as you said earlier, don't want to make things worse. And one thing that I have been picking up in a lot of the talks around suicide, and even a lot of the big mental health websites, is that people who are suicidal, breaking the myth that they do not want to die, they want to escape pain. Now, I personally, and it's probably going to be quite controversial for anyone listening to this, but this is my experience. When I was suicidal and wanting to take my own life, I wanted to die. Period. This concept of people escaping pain, that didn't enter my head. I wanted to die. My first time I had suicidal thoughts was when I was 16. And I did not want to be on this planet anymore. And so this is quite contentious for people, this belief, this theory that they don't want to die. I did. I got it wrong. I fluffed it, failed, and I laugh because that's what drove me, that sense of failure. And now I'm glad I did, because I can campaign in this suicide prevention awareness. But a lot of it is around the language that we use and the beliefs or misbeliefs, misperceptions that many people have, and the language that we use.
I think we get to that point because researchers speak to people who have either stepped back from or survived their suicide attempt. And then they have a conversation with them and they hear the story. And if the story that I didn't want to live this life rather than I wanted to die is what's coming out, then that is being taken as the global truth. It isn't. When I was at that point, I thought the world would become a better place if I wasn't in it. So I was doing the world a favor by disappearing. The fact that I didn't was because I wanted to give myself another chance to fail. I didn't want to be accused of not having tried everything else. So stepping back from my suicide was not a desire to keep on living. It was a desire to just prove that I could not be helped. Lo and behold, I did get the help and never looked back.
It's weird, isn't it, how we laugh about it now? That sort of dark humour, but because we can.
But it's because it's not who we are. It's where we were. Yes. And of course, once you have chosen death, you get a different perspective on death, I think. I'm not afraid of death. It's something that either happens to you or that you can choose. And I know that's controversial as well, because you're not supposed to say these kind of things. But I just did. And I have no qualms about it. But I do understand your point that just because the official line is they just want to escape the pain or they don't want to live the life they're living. I hear that a lot from my suicidal clients, but I'm not asking them if that's how they feel. They're telling me. So I'm not leading them down a particular path that I think is right. You've also often heard that suicide is just cowardice. But actually, it's a very rational thing that goes on. You've made up your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I had made up my mind. And when I was in therapy quite a few years after, my therapist said to me, but perhaps on a conscious level, this is something else I talk about a lot, on a conscious level, I wanted to die. However, on an unconscious or subconscious level, potentially, possibly, because this is all theory, because it's subconscious and unconscious, so we'll never know, that there was something that didn't want to die. But consciously, I wanted to die. And I'd planned, and someone else said, well, of the planning and preparation, that means that you didn't really want to die because you were planning and planning and planning. My counter argument is I was planning and planning and planning to make sure it happened, and it worked, and I was successful. So yes, I would counter quite a few arguments that are based on, as you say, and perhaps picking up on what you said a minute ago, perhaps sometimes the theorists put their spin on what someone else is saying. I had this a few weeks ago. I wrote an article about how I wrote about my story and someone changed the wording, and I was furious because it wasn't like an article I was writing about something else. This was my story, and they changed the words of my story, and I was so angry, Peter. I thought, how dare you, because you are putting your spin on my story. And it was the very thing why I didn't speak in the first place many years ago. Are people going to distort, delete, generalize, twist, put their spin on what I had to say rather than hear my words? And it's still happening.
We have no right to put our spin on somebody else's story. And I understand your anger totally. I'm now curious, given this conversation we've just had, what I will learn differently, how the thinking has moved when I attend this suicide summit because I've really felt I've attended in 2021, 2022, and now it's 2023. And I really felt last time that it was same old, same old. There are differences in cultures and countries, and some suicides are recorded as accidents because it's not allowed to take your own life, and all that stuff we can get into, which requires far more little videos than this one.
Mm.
But I think it's important that we listen to the person's reason for wanting to end their life, and not approach it as professionals or anybody else with some preconceived idea, oh, but it's only because, and I know better. Because I have no idea why somebody wants to take their own life. I knew why I wanted to take my own life. And that reason has disappeared. It's gone. I've had help to remove that. But now it's my turn to help other people remove their reasons for wanting to die. And not easy, but necessary. So any final thoughts, Sylvia, before we ask people to join in with their thoughts?
I think it will be very interesting as what comes from this summit. What new thinking there may be. What can we do to prevent suicide? And it's bringing it earlier. What can we do to encourage people to speak up, to seek help, to spot their signs that they may be struggling, for others to be brave, courageous enough to ask those questions. The prevention end, what more is being done, the prevention and not the curative end. And it will be very interesting as to what new stuff comes from this summit, as you say, rather than the same old stuff just refreshed and represented. I will be very keen to hear what the outcome or what you would think of that, next time we speak.
I shall certainly be taking notes, and I shall be downloading all the presentations and the notes that come with it. Thank you very much, all of you, for having stayed through the course of this conversation. And let us hear your views on suicide. It doesn't have to be personal experiences. It's a private thing. You can talk about it if you like, don't if you don't like. But let us have your thoughts and your views regardless. It's always interesting to hear. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, it's a tough subject. So thank you if you stuck with it through the end. But we would like to hear people's views, because the more we talk about it, the more we can prevent it.
Absolutely. Take care. See you later. Bye.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.